Fyodorovna Semyonova with her big dumb face.
The longest opening sequence.
That midlife crisis.
When are all chairs bolted to the...
We're not told that.
Yeah, we do.
We're not told that.
It is written. It is written.
Hello, everyone. Oh, are you opening the door?
Kind of open the door. Oh, there we go.
I was going to say you should have rehearsed this.
You hear that?
Now, what do you say?
Talk to me.
Yeah, let's talk about this movie.
About this movie. Oh, wait, hold on.
That's how you open the door. What's with... Oh,
There we
you're
go.
having a Foster's. A Foster's.
It's the Australians of beer.
Did you go specifically pick that up?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just... Old Reliable McCurdy, that's you.
Look at that.
Drinking what was in the
Look at
fridge.
that.
A rye IPA.
Look at
Anyway.
how big this thing is.
Yeah, that's
This
proper.
is as big as my face.
Proper big. I didn't realize this was an Australian film until it was, going. And
Yeah.
I mean, they even have a dead kangaroo in this movie. Like, I was just like, yes.
There's a dead kangaroo. Like they just see it. They're like, yeah, it's a dead kangaroo. We are like, oh my god, it's a kangaroo.
Yeah, for us, I mean,
Holy
if it was a dead deer, we'd be like, yeah, whatever, but we're like, oh my god, a kangaroo. They're like,
They're
no,
like,
it's the
oh
same
yeah,
thing.
it's in Australia.
Yeah, but I had the one half of me is thinking, oh, isn't that cool that they, we got a taste of Australian culture, but really it's old Australian culture just cut with U.S. exported slang and mumble rap.
It's Gen Z, baby.
It's just Gen Z is worldwide now. It's sad. It's sorry everywhere but here. Sorry, we've given you Snapchat and TikTok. Well, I guess we didn't give you TikTok, but
I think you're an old man.
we fill out your TikToks, that's for sure. Anyway, let's talk about this movie, dude. Talk to everyone.
Talk to you.
Talking to me. You talking to me? I'll talk to you.
Talking to you.
Okay.
Switch it up.
Let me full screen myself. Okay. I kind of need to boop. All right. Talk to Me is a refreshing take on the possession genre, taking the essence of an exorcism or seance movie and reducing it to an immature party drug allegory. The premise is so captivating and terrifying that the film doesn't need to rely on jump scares, of which I don't recall there being a single one, the mark of a true horror movie. Instead, the horror comes when you realize the complete lack of reverence that the young party kid cast has for I'm like turned up way too loud. Sorry. Okay. Instead, the horror comes when you realize the complete lack of reverence that the young party kid cast has for discovering a method of communicating with spirits of the dead. Instead of falling to their knees and repenting to God, having found proof of the afterlife, they film each other freaking out, not under the influence of drugs and alcohol, but under the influence of these ghosts they willingly allow into their bodies. The kids eventually become addicted to the act, including the dopamine hit from carelessly posting these videos online. The horrific thing is that nobody is afraid of the horrific thing happening right before their very eyes and iPhones. This, of course, reflects the age we live in, where nothing is too sacred to post, and everyone seems keen to take a video of someone in distress rather than stepping in and helping them out. Carelessly conjuring fiendish spirits for the almighty click is a terrifying glance at how the pursuit of digital attention is slowly but surely dehumanizing and desensitizing all of us digital addicts as we communicate exclusively through our devices instead of face-to-face. Hence the brilliance of the title. Talk to me, dude. Talk to me. Oops.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, seriously, I feel like I've adjusted my settings in the interim, and everything is
It's been a
wonky.
while. I will say we were going to do The Holdovers, which I do hope we'll talk about later this week. It's just that movie small. It has a smaller window, and it's not as wide of a release, unfortunately, because this other Marvel movie had to come out. But anyway, hold on, we have some comments already. People have already.
I was
talking.
having trouble finding a theater, so
Yeah,
we'll make that happen this week.
So maybe this week we will talk about The Holdovers, which I personally thoroughly enjoyed. I hope you do. But
Sure,
yeah,
I will.
let's talk about talk to me. Talk to
When
me.
did this come
Charlie.
out?
This came out same week as Haunted Mansion.
Why did we see? Oh yeah,
I
we saw
don't
Haunted
know.
Mansion because he worked on it.
I worked on it, and now I completely regret. I'd be like, man, I wish I saw this instead.
Yeah.
All right. So don't forget to buy our merch. I keep bringing it up, but the holidays are coming up.
Yeah, get it for
Buy our-
grandma.
Buy
Get
it.
the
Get
dumbest
it for
shirt
grandma.
ever made for grandma.
Get it for grandma. Get it for dad. There you go.
And
Just
then
get
take
it
a
for your
picture of
loved
their
one.
face as they open it up.
When they're wearing it, they're like, "What?
What? Why did
Yeah.
you do this to me?"
Greatest merch campaign of all time." Anyway, let's talk about Talk to Me.
Anyway.
Directed by Danny and Michael Filippo, written by Danny Filippo and Bill Heinzman, based on a concept by Daley Pearson. So let's talk about Raka Raka, which is, so the two directors, they have a YouTube channel that's huge, right? It would be like you and I have this YouTube channel, and then you and I decided, hey, let's go make a movie. But their YouTube channel, they made a bunch of horror comedies. They had started off, they'd start off at a young age, and they made a bunch of wrestling videos, essentially, of them doing these stupid stunts or jumping off buildings and doing crazy stuff like that. And tonight I don't have a lot of slides for a couple of reasons. One, this movie's been out for a while, so most of this information's been around. You could probably find it. And two, it's an Australian movie. Most of the people in this movie you probably never heard of before, so there's not a lot to talk about there. But back to these two, they were on crew for another Australian horror film you've probably heard of, The Babadook, which I've never seen. I've heard some people say it's great, some people say it's terrible. I don't know what your take on it is.
I've never heard anybody say it's terrible across the board. All I've ever known is there is a similar theme. This movie is largely about grief, and The Babadook is exclusively about grief. So that's not. I was thinking about that movie as I was watching this, so that's funny.
So these guys worked on that movie. They were just crew on that movie. But so this film, and I was very curious, where did they come up with this idea? How did they come up with it? So it comes from two sources of inspiration. First one kind of hits on what you were already talking about in your review. So Danny, who's one of the co-writers, remembers a friend having a really bad reaction to a drug. Like they were at a party, someone was taking drugs who hadn't taken drugs before. They had a really bad reaction to that drug. And his friends weren't helping him. They were just videotaping him suffering through this bad trip, basically. Which is part of the inspiration, which kind of hits on what you were talking about. And you can definitely see that in this movie. And then two was from Daley Pearson. That's where the concept or based off concept comes from. Daley actually was, Charlie, this is like a real... what's the deep cut, but if you remember before Thor Ragnarok came out, there was this short film of Thor living with a roommate as a joke thing that Taika Waititi did. He played the roommate, this guy Daryl Daley Pearson, but he had done a short film about an actor, or had this short film about this person, these kids doing possession and screwing around with the idea of possession. And this basically morphed into what we know as Talk to Me. This film went on to get in Sundance in 2023 alongside another film we saw earlier this year, The Infinity Pool, which was individually picked up by A24. This A24 film is the largest grossing film to date, and a sequel is already in the works. A prequel film in the style similar to Searching or this year's Missing has already been filmed. So they had like this prequel that they did with that kid in the very beginning of this movie. And I don't know when they're going to release that, but apparently they made a prequel, and then they're already starting to do a sequel. The sequel is going to be called Talk to Me.
Oh no!
Oh no!
Oh no!
So that's the sequel.
They didn't go with Talk to Us, or they didn't change the third word.
Right.
They didn't change the first word nor the
Well, then the
third
next
word,
one's going to be
but
Talk
they
3 Me.
changed. Yeah, I mean, like, save that for purposely corny franchises like Too Fast, Too Furious, right? They can get away with it because they're self-aware of how dumb they are. This movie is too classy for that crap.
True. All right, so I'm
That's
going to
too
just
bad.
run off all of the names and all the characters. So we have Sophie Wilde plays Mia, Alexandra Jensen plays Jade, Joe Bird. I know a Joe Bird back home. He was our local weatherman, but that's the kid's, the little brother. His name plays Riley. Otis Donji plays Daniel. He's the only he's one of the only few people in this movie that are in something else that I think most people would recognize. He played the young Aquaman in the first Aquaman movie.
Okay.
And then Miranda Otto is the only reason Charlie likes this movie.
Hold up.
Is the only reason Charlie likes this movie.
I'll take a whiskey shot for Miranda. I love you. I love you, AON. My girl.
And then we got Zoe Terex.
Oh, coincidentally, I just got this.
Nice.
I was looking for a bottle opener, and I went with the Fellowship. Anyway, continue, sir.
Okay, and then we got Chris Lozio plays Joss, and he's going to be in another film. I don't know if this movie already came out and we just missed it, or it's coming out recently. It's called Next Goal Wins, another Taika Waititi film. It's about a sports team that's terrible, and I think Michael Fassbender plays their coach, and he's just trying to get this team to win one game. It's a game about a bunch of losers trying to win.
He looks like he's from New Zealand. He must be.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
I believe
cool.
so. So
he's like
literally that's all the slides I have on this movie.
I vaguely recognize him, but that might just be, like God, I can't place it, but that's exactly what New Zealanders look like. The indigenous. If you're familiar with any, like Peter Jackson will do those prayer rituals where they come out and that stuff is awesome. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. But he uses it to bless every one of his productions, which is so cool.
But I think that's also kind of in line with why. I mean, the guy who plays the boyfriend in this, again, the guy who played the young Jason Momoa, I can see how that kind of all ties together essentially.
Yeah. And there is a guy
and the guy who played in that movie who plays his dad, who was Jango Fett. That's like it's all connected because same area, same part of the globe we're talking about. But Charlie, literally, that's all I have to talk about with this movie.
Let's talk about drugs.
Okay.
Well, let's
are we going to talk about drugs, or are we going to talk about where we want to put it on the list first?
In that case, let's pull this up because just because it's been a while. Let me just read where we're at. 2023, Oppenheimer, obviously still at the top. Killers of the Flower Moon. That was 2 episodes ago. Beau Is Afraid, Infinity Pool, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, TMNT, the latest animated. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, which apparently they're changing. We heard it's like
they're changing the next one to something else. So
which
who
is
knows?
Cool. I like that more. John Wick 4, Tetris, Gran Turismo, Air, Creed 3, Sound of Freedom, A Haunting in Venice, The Creator, The Flash, Fast X, Asteroid City, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Shazam, Fear of the Gods, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, Megan, Missing the Machine, Barbie, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, The Exorcist Believer, Scream 6, The Super Mario Bros. Movie, Dumb Money, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Renfield, The Equalizer 3, Blue Beetle, Evil Dead Rise, The Pope's Exorcist, Magic Mike's Last Dance, Transformers, Rise of the Beast, Knock at the Cabin, Insidious, The Red Door, Five Nights at Freddy's, The Nun 2, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, Plane, Haunted Mansion, Cocaine Bear, Knights of the Zodiac. Maybe I shouldn't read it anymore. It takes 12 minutes to do it.
So, Charlie, I really thought really hard after finishing the movie where I think it should go.
Okay.
I think the best place for it, actually, I think it's just above Haunted Mansion. I think that's a really good spot to put the movie. It's just above the other movie that was released that weekend because it was the better of the two movies. So I think by Haunted Mansion, I think that's the best spot.
Totally fair.
All right, I guess we're done.
We're
Let's
done. Good
toast.
night. We're toasting to no one. We're toasting to
No.
drugs.
So okay,
Where
actually,
you got it?
looking at the list, let me see. I'm thinking somewhere in the realm within our top 10 is where I'm
Yeah.
thinking. I'm
That's
thinking
definitely where I'm at.
because here's the thing. I'm thinking
No
no
heroin?
heroin. No heroin. I'm thinking really
No,
I think it was
this
just
movie definitely had some heroin
heroin, yeah.
overtones, right? Like
Overtone. Yeah, right, right.
they literally would strap each other down with a belt. What do people do when they're shooting up? They belt off their arm. I mean, it was like all the imagery was there. They light a candle too. When people are shooting heroin, they light a candle, they break out the belt. I mean, if there was a spoon, that would have completed the whole image, right?
Right. Okay, so my initial honestly,
I
my
love
initial
nothing
thought
more than intelligent horror movies. I don't think I love anything else on the planet than intelligent
right.
horror movies. I mean, every week I sit here and I'm berated by you. You just hate everything. No, I think jump scare movies are stupid and a waste of time. And if there's a jump scare in a movie, that's fine. If done properly,
If it's
great.
done well,
But if
it's
the
fine. I
whole
get it.
thing is
I
nothing
get it.
but none two roller coaster rides of jump scares, I hate you, and I want a mass shooter to come into the theater.
Okay. Okay, so where I think this movie should land, I was really thinking about it. I was like, somewhere
On
between
God,
Infinity Pool, on
on God,
God,
no
for real,
cringe,
no cap, no cap.
no cap.
Somewhere, okay, somewhere in the realm. I don't think it beats Killers of the Flower Moon. So I think
No.
those two movies in the top are safe.
Yeah,
But I think somewhere between Beau Is Afraid and Infinity Pool. And I
okay,
think I would argue I think it beats Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I really do like
okay.
that movie, but I think for the more I think it just breaks that echelon of like, yes, it's a fantasy movie, but it's a movie that's kind of talking about something a little more deeper than just family, but it's not as fantastic. I mean, it's like less fantastical in some ways that Guardians of the Galaxy is this super huge fantastical movie. This is a
Yeah,
small independent movie, and I appreciate it for being that. I also appreciate it for kind of being an art house movie that doesn't go too pretentious. So yeah, that's where I'm like, it's somewhere in the realm of Infinity Pool and Beau Is Afraid. I
yeah.
think we
As
just got to figure
usual,
out
I
where.
don't let. For me, as usual, I don't think budgets. I don't let budgets dictate it. You know, oh, you got the big MCU movie versus the small movie. I try to vacuum suck all that stuff out and just
It's not
judge
about
them
here's the thing, it's for me, it's not
regardless.
about the budget as much as it is are you telling, I think if you can tell a really compelling story and not have to use visuals as a crutch as far as like, "Oh, it's in space," or, "Oh, we're, in the land of Mordor," or something like that,
Yeah,
versus if you can tell a really compelling story
in a room,
that, like, grips you
in a
in a
couple of
room,
rooms, you know. Yeah,
I think that's
it's
superior
impressive
storytelling.
if you can do that, and that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I'm always on about. Like even something like you already brought up the Babadook, um, which I didn't get to over October. Wish I had. It's same kind of thing. It's like just a woman living her life, and yet you can make that one of the most haunting things ever. Now, the only I'm something's happened between you and I where it's like we don't fight anymore. We don't fight like we used to. We're like an old married couple where we just understand each other and everything's just like copacetic, making this show boring now. But in fact, I'm going to manufacture some hate. I'm going to put it down by Haunted Mansion just to spite you so that we actually have something to fight about. No,
Okay, just put
I
it down there. That's
I
fine.
walk out,
It's
as I've
fine.
said before, because my thought process is the same as you. I was like, God, is this better than Guardians? I think it is. So then, of course, I start attacking our new golden two, our From Russia with Love Goldfinger equivalent in this list, which is
Mhm.
Beau Is Afraid and Infinity Pool. They've been together for a while. And the only difference is that walking out of those two movies, I felt like my hair was on fire. I felt my that just with this, I had that feeling in the very first scene when the kids start to experiment. You kind of have your not just the first scene where, Mia tries it for the first time, but then the next time they do it and it's like a party montage. That stuff really had me going where I was like, this is brilliant. I don't know if by the end it was on fire enough to where, I mean, it's wrapped up in the end with a perfect little bow that you are
It is the
expecting, and
perfect it is the most
it's
perfect
good.
ending.
It's
It
like
is the most perfect
they
ending.
tie it.
Right.
You're
I
waiting for
love
it to
the ending.
happen, and they
I
give it to
love the
you. Me
ending of
too.
this.
Me too. But it's satisfying and subtle versus Infinity Pool and Beau Is Afraid. My brain is electrified. It's on fire. It's just like, with the
Right.
intensity of the meaning behind the two. This had its own meaning, but not to that same degree of intensity as Infinity Pool and Beau Is Afraid. So right now I'm with you, but I'm at number 5. I'm just like still Beau Is
And
Afraid
I'm
is that
kinda
tour
like
de force,
yeah.
and Infinity Pool's whole thing about consequences and what happens when you remove consequences from even adults and how they revert back to childish behavior.
Mhm.
That resonated throughout the entire movie up to the end. Whereas the only difference with Talk to Me is that everything I talked about in the intro, those elements are there. They kind of wane by the end. That's the only thing. The ending is perfect, and I'm with you. I love it, but it starts to just become less of like commentary, less drug partying irreverence commentary, and more straightforward. This kid's been possessed, we're trying to cure him. Meanwhile, Mia is under control. Let's say she went too long in a session, and now she's got these spirits, including a pseudo mother
Right.
spirit, messing with her mind. And what that leads to is the themes slip away, and we just narrow down into more conventional stuff, not in a bad way, but in a way that
When you
Beau Is Afraid's
say
themes carry from beginning to end. Infinity
right.
Pool's themes carry from beginning to end, and I appreciate that more, and that's more complete than what this has, but it's
Do
still
you
enough to
mean when you
bump it
say
up
more
high.
conventional, what do you mean by more conventional? I'm
But
questioning that only because my takeaway wasn't as much about the irreverence to the possession or the drug use, but more of something that I think maybe is just we talked about The Exorcist a couple of weeks back. And, like there's a lot of bad things that we had to talk about for that one.
yep,
But there was something that I remember even like going to church and hearing about. I remember hearing stories about this was this idea that there's a reason, I'm pretty sure it's in the Bible, but there's a reason why you shouldn't talk to the dead,
yeah,
right? Like you want no one should ever be trying to speak to the dead, right? And this movie is just very like irreverent about that idea. It's like it's literally just like, oh no, we're totally just gonna talk to the dead. Like
just
it's
dude.
just
Okay,
a
to your
joke.
point, to illustrate your point, just at the moment when everybody in the room should be running away screaming, what do?
Get their cameras out, get their phones out.
And then they start laughing. They're
Right.
filming it and they're laughing. Yeah, that yeah. Oh, and I'm sitting there just
Oh,
that was the most horrific thing, just being like, ah, you know. So
right.
you have a
Um,
couple elements. You have that, and then you have the whole with Mia in particular. Her mom's just died, and she's lonely, and nobody will talk to her. The only person who will talk to her is her father. That's the only person. Everybody else, and Riley, the little brother, her friend's little brother, but her friend Jade, her best friend, in their first scene together, she just keeps ignoring her. She just keeps looking at her phone. They go
she
to
doesn't
that.
know what to say to her friends. Like yeah,
Yeah,
because it's supposed to be 2 years. This is supposed to be 2 years after her mom tragically died. And so she still like doesn't know. It's almost like she's kind of like gone off and she's like, well, I'm with this boy now. I think also the film kind of hints that there was a previous relationship between the boy and her. Like it wasn't it
It
wasn't
doesn't.
like a romantic thing, but it was like there's that thing lingering there.
Daniel, you're talking about Daniel,
Right.
So
Yeah.
Daniel is her ex-boyfriend. Well, okay,
Yeah.
hang on, backtrack.
It's
She
like
says,
their ex-boyfriend from like when we were way younger or something
yeah,
like that.
we
Like
used to
we
hold
held
hands. Yeah. So,
Right.
but she was clearly into him. So there's that, and Daniel's like, Daniel might be gay, possibly because
I thought that too. I was like, but here's the thing that's the one thing I thought was clever about this movie. And I kind of I'm trying to get to this point was just how, this, what did I write? I said, movie has plenty of dread. I like the take on possession and speaking to the dead. Reminds me a lot of stories I've heard of people speaking to loved ones, but they're actually speaking to a demon or the devil who only motivation is to deceive you. And that was something that I found interesting in this, like the possession stuff, especially when it gets really creepy, was that there are times when, and there's one's particular with Mia's father and Mia's mother, where eventually we get to the point where we realize I don't think she's actually talking to Mia's mother, and you
Yeah.
figure that out. But that's
I
not
think
Mia's
pretty
mother.
quick. I think pretty
Yeah,
quick.
that's not Mia's mother. That's the devil, or I mean, whatever. We'll say it the devil. That's the devil telling you things that you want to hear and lying to you, and deceiving you to put you in the wrong path. And
Steal your
there's
soul.
times,
Steal the
yeah,
soul of this
and right,
young
and there's a
boy.
lot of
Yeah.
times, even the creepier moments, even in the party scene, where it's like it's suggested when he's like he doesn't like when you touch him and like things like that.
You make him
Um,
soft. Literally
right,
says you make him soft, implying that like when his girlfriend touches him, he has an anti-sexual response. He has a
right.
sexual revulsion to her. Like,
But we don't know
ooh.
how true that is too, because like as the movie goes on, you're like, was that the truth, or are we led to believe that it was just a way to create more tension and more conflict between each other? Like
Well,
basically
they set it
they're
up.
creating these lies.
It's a couple things at once, right? Because as they're walking to the party, even the younger brother Riley says, "Even I've kissed my girlfriend or whatever. It's been 3 months with you and Daniel. How have you guys not done anything?" And then when
Right.
the demon takes over, and the reason they do this is because that later that night, Riley and Mia are in bed together, platonically in bed together.
Right.
She's very much another sister to him, and he's afraid, so he has to sleep with her, and he said something like, like they read our minds. I believe that was in that scene. I could be wrong, but I believe in that scene it
Yeah.
was they read our minds. Actually, I think I might be wrong about that. Maybe
There's
that
a lot
scene
of
comes
stuff.
later.
I will say this. There's
But
a lot of stuff because it's Australian that I had to kind of like listen a
I
little
had
bit
subtitles on the
closer
whole time.
because I was like,
Yeah,
uh,
I had
okay,
subtitles
I
on
think I
the
understood what you
entire
said.
time. So, but
Yeah.
the regardless of when it happened, the point is that at some point somebody says, "I think they read our minds." And why wouldn't they? Because they're inside of our bodies. They could read our minds. So, and you get moments of them doing that. And so what that's setting up, the ultimate point being that what that is setting up is this idea that we already had a scene when Mia told Riley about the death of her mom. So then when Riley, really young kid, 15-year-old kid, has a session, that spirit automatically knows how to manipulate Mia, and it is doing so because it wants Riley. So all that stuff is really well set up, and the whole idea is that if you're, let's say, under their spell, if your session goes too long, the spirits kind of find a way to hang around, right? They start to haunt you. And then
That's
beyond
why they
that,
have a
if you
timer, right?
die, yeah, they time it. If you die, basically your soul is stolen forever. That stuff is slightly loose because it's like, okay, wait, what does that mean? If you die while possessed, they keep your soul, as opposed to, I guess, if you died, like right now, if you and I died, we go to whichever afterlife we're destined for, I guess. But then these spirits have you, as opposed to you die with them inside of you, and then they get to like possess your body indefinitely or something, you know what I mean? Like come back to life in your body or something like that.
Right.
That would have been a little more concrete if you let me backtrack so we can lay it out for anybody who hasn't seen the movie. You grab this hand that is in the background here that I will flash real
The
quick.
ceramic hand of apparently an embalmed fortune teller or witch. We don't they don't
Yeah,
100% know.
or
They just kind of know.
Satanist. Yeah, so the hand
Something.
was cut off of that
It
person,
has some sort of story.
embalmed, and then encased in ceramic. That's such a cool premise, and what a like an iconic, literally an icon that
They're
represents this
gonna
movie,
sell
and
100 of those now. They're gonna
yeah,
sell millions of those. People are gonna
it's such a
buy
cool
them
idea.
and
Yeah,
put them in their
so
houses, and then they're gonna
but
talk to you.
you grab the hand, and you say, "Talk to me," and a spirit shows up. And then if you say, "Let me in," they possess you. And they represent this very well for anybody who's ever been to any party where you're that person who's never done whatever it is. Like, for example, I was in London for New Year's one time, years back. A bunch of idiots the whole room of people were doing whippets. For anybody who doesn't know what a whippet is, it's basically, I think it straight up comes from whipped cream, because you could take the gas from from a whipped cream thing, and you can just inhale the gas, not the whipped cream itself. And you inhale that, and it cuts off oxygen to your brain, and it gives you 30 seconds of just like weird, crazy euphoria. What that has evolved into is this like gun looking thing that you load up with a canister, and someone will shoot it into your mouth, and you rapidly inhale it, and you hold it. So it's no different from this party scene where it's like, who's never done it before? Everybody's all youthfully nervous. Like, oh, sounds dangerous. And somebody goes, "I'll do it." Mia's like, I'll do it. And they sit her down, and everybody's like cheering her on, do it. And she does it. And to who just said that? I think Nico just said to the point where where it's represented as not you're being possessed by a devil, but it's not portrayed as something where you're like, oh what the fuck? It's something that was pleasurable. It's something that was like a roller coaster. It was scary at first, but I want to do it again. So anyway, so with the whippets, just real quick, I was like, yeah, I'll do one, because I knew these things are horrible for your brain. You're cutting off oxygen to your brain. So, I'm the virgin. You have the person who knows what they're doing standing there with you. They do it to you, and then you're a weirdo for 30 seconds. You're just like, you become a crazy person for 30 seconds. And then you snap back to reality, and it's like, what happened? And it's just like, dude, you were nuts, man. And then I was like, okay, I'm done, because I know these things are horrible for you. And then later that night, the guy who did it, I was talking to him. I was like, so like, how many of these have you done? He's like, oh, I probably did like 60 tonight. I said, dude, you know that doing more than like 5, you already have brain damage. You understand that, right? He's like, what? It's just like, dude, you idiot, you knucklehead. But it's no different than like old school videos. Do you remember the videos of the guy doing salvia? They're one of the greatest YouTube videos ever generated, which is a guy who the whole thing was like, it'd be like driving school on salvia or gardening on salvia. And it'd be this guy standing there going, today we're going to replant this plant. We're going to take it out of this pot, and we're going to fertilize it, and we're going to dig a hole, and we're going to plant it in the earth. But first, let's take a hit of our salvia. And the whole joke was that he would lay out this plan for what he was going to do. And then he would hit salvia, which is this drug that gives you this like micro trip for 90 seconds. And he'd take this huge hit, and he would just like he'd float off into space for 90 seconds, like lay down and just be like staring off into the distance. And obviously the whole joke was that people film it because it's hilarious, right, and humiliating. But then you take that concept and you apply it to mother effing demonic possession. It's so gross. It's like walking into a church and slapping the priest and like taking a poop on Jesus. It's just like, you don't do that. That's awful. It's like going into Krakow or Krakow, Dachau or Auschwitz and like taking selfies with the ovens. It's just like, have some respect. But no, they're conjuring dead people and then laughing their asses off about it. Like, it's just so like those are the highlights of the movie. But then to my point, over time, that stuff kind of goes away and it becomes more about Mia dealing with her mom. And that stuff's good, but that's what I mean. It's a little more conventional. The cell phones go away, the allegory largely goes away, and we just wrap up this story about Mia. That doesn't mean it's bad. It certainly doesn't mean it's bad.
I would argue, though, I would say this to that point. I would just argue that, yes, the that stuff goes away, but I do kind of see it in the same regards as someone who did that drug that first night, got really hooked to it, got hooked
Yeah.
to it a little too much.
Yeah.
And then it took on a life of its own where they went down a terrible rabbit hole. And
Which
so
we
I
saw.
think it is because while yes, it's like that's more conventional with them trying to save the brother and everything. I'm like, yeah, but then there's the aspect of like what happens after the party? What happens after you can't get that hit anymore? Do you continuously try to find those things? I just want to point out
To your point, she stole the hand. Eventually, she steals
Right.
the hand
She steals the
because she
hand.
wants to contact her
Exactly.
mom. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to just point to Nico's thing because this kind of did come to me as well. It says, but how did they know the rules? How did they know it was 90 seconds? Did the hand come with brochure, words written on it? What else did he say?
I see this more as, again, I see this like the
I
Wick
like the
thing.
idea that it's just like it was passed down, like kid to kid.
Yeah.
Because even like by the end of the movie, we see, oh, someone else has possessed the hand now, and they're doing the
Yeah.
same thing. And I like that idea of like this hand has been like passed on from person
On
to
and on.
person. Yeah,
Same. That's what makes the
I
ending
love that.
so perfect. And again, the ending is predictable, but I big pet peeve of mine when people think predictable means bad. This is predictable, but perfect. You know exactly what's about to happen, but it just ties everything up nicely. And she ends up paying for her. Like, remember the last movie to deal with this was what was it? It was The
With
Flash.
possession or
The Flash dealt with not being able to let go of a past trauma, both
Right.
having to deal with somebody's mother. So the Flash loses his mom and he almost ends the world because he keeps trying to change time to bring her back. And with this, Mia keeps trying to conjure the spirit of her mom. But
Or it's too
we're clear. It's clear that it's not her mom. It's
Right.
it
It's
is
a
the
demon.
spirits manipulating her to steal the soul of her dad eventually, and then steal the soul of Riley. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, like all that stuff is terrific. But that's what I mean. It becomes a little more conventional. So far as like that is slightly more conventional than carrying on this theme of like irreverence and cell phones and the digital age and like a
Yeah,
crime
I
happening,
get
like a
that.
dead body laying in the street and people go up and film the dead body
Sure,
instead
but
of
I
helping the
still think
person. You know what I mean?
I think it's just like the continuation of the idea. Like I still think
Yeah.
it worked. But
Again,
let's like
my
hold on.
point
Let's
being
make
that's enough
comparisons
to get
between
it
this
just
and
below Infinity Pool. That's my
I
point
don't
there
know.
is that it's like Infinity Pool seems more complete in that the very themes that started off are the very themes addressed at the end. It's perfectly bookended, whereas this has multiple themes running, but it starts with this fresh idea, this fresh drug allegory, and ends like the
Uh-huh.
Babadook. And that doesn't mean bad, but I'm saying Infinity Pool and Beau Is Afraid is just more complete. Where again, I'm like, I feel like I'm having a seizure because I'm like, oh, these movies are like perfect. This movie, not as overwhelming, but still fresh. I mean, that just all the party scenes are so freaky fresh, you know. And that's the best part of it. I mean, like at one point, you think something's going to happen with Daniel, the boyfriend, and all that happens is that he falls over in the chair and he starts making out with the dog. And, you're expecting somebody to die or something, but instead he comes back and he's like, delete that video. And they're like, no, dude, we're going to post it. You were making out with a dog, and it's so delightfully immature and wrong, and like anybody with a soul would come in and stop these kids, not just an adult, but anybody, even just any kid with any respect would just be like, guys, you're messing around with the dead, what are you doing, and it's just so gross. It's great, but those elements are up until the halfway point. And then the second half of the movie is just back to Mia dealing with her mom. Again, not bad, but just less complete in my view.
Okay.
I mean, like, what was the opening shot, right? Do you remember the opening shot?
I don't actually. No, wait, it's like it's like at her mom's funeral, isn't it?
That for her, but the opening of the movie is we actually see him later. So remember they were on the bus with that guy whose brother died, and they're asking him all these questions about it. Which I love movies like that too, where they have the thing that allows you to do something dangerous and it's fun, and they take it too far, and then they go find somebody who dealt with it before, and they're like, you didn't do this, did you? And it's like, yeah,
real quick.
About
so when you talked about that, though, the one thing, like, there were two things. There's two things with this movie for a bunch of reasons, but this film reminded me of two other films prior to it, and that not in a bad way. It's just I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of in this other movie, and they're not from this year. But one, it reminded me a lot of two recent horror films. One being
Smile.
It Follows. It Follows. I hadn't seen Smile yet, so
okay.
It reminded me of It Follows. Mostly with the fact that It Follows a very strong premise, like a very strong structured premise, lots of rules. Basically, this movie does the same thing where it's like, you touch this hand, you say, talk to me, you say, let me in, the demon possesses you, or the dead possess you, but if it goes past 90 seconds, things could go wrong. So it kind of has this like Bloody Mary.
Sorry, to address Nico's point, I think 90 seconds was like a guideline. I don't think it was like, you go 1 microsecond over and hell breaks loose.
But
I think
but
it was
all
like,
we know, is that
thing.
It could have been 90 seconds,
hey,
and then nobody had said why you don't go past 90 seconds. So like again, it could have been a thing where it's like passed from person
to person. But the whippet thing, hey, dude, don't do more than 10 whippets. Why? Well, just it'll mess with your brain, and then somebody does 50, and they're like, "I'm fine still." They break the guideline, but it's like, yeah,
the
but
other
you
movie
stay back.
But also with It Follows, it reminded me of the idea that they go in It Follows. They had to find the kid that she had sex with before to find out, like, hey, what happened? Why did you do this? Because she tried to find him right after they had sex, and then she's like running around like she can't find this guy, and he's gone into hiding. And he kind of explains what is going on. And you see the same thing in this movie. The other movie this reminded me of was Oculus. And I don't know if you saw that movie, but it was about this mirror where like the mirror deceives the user of the people with the mirror, and they do all these horrible things, not realizing that they're doing them. And there's a lot of scenes in this movie that kind of did the same thing. There's like 2 or 3 scenes where like when she's sucking on the foot and she thinks the demon's doing it, but she's actually doing it.
Again, what I was just saying, the very opening. Well, yeah, when she scissors her
kills
dad,
her dad.
But in the very beginning, we see that. The very first thing we see is, getting back to what I was saying, the very first thing we see is that brother they later meet on the bus. He goes to find his brother at a party, and it's clear he's all scratched up. It's clear that he's been messing around with the hand, and he tries to walk him out of the party. And what happens? In case you forgot, he's walking him out, and everybody sees that he's like, he looks like he's been beaten up, and everybody pulls out their phones, and they're all filming it. And the brother said, he's like, put your mother effing phones down. And that's where you're like, what a good brother. Like, he's like, my brother is in a rough spot. Why are you filming it? Why are you a-holes filming this. Shame on you. But that's where we're at, and that's why it's such a great illustration of the times. Now,
Right.
I don't think this was I'm sorry. I believe this is missing. If in the ending, I'm almost tempted to pull it up right now because I'm curious. Spoiler alert: if you go to the ending, Mia dies by being thrown into traffic. I'm curious, and I would maybe change my mind on the movie if there were a bunch of people filming her laying in the middle of the street. Then I'd be like, okay, this movie is perfect because it has that bookend of
All right.
people
Go
filming
figure that out.
tragedy in the beginning and then filming it at the end. But that's not. I swear that's not there. And so, but that's what I mean.
Well,
That's that
I
would have
think part of the
completed it.
reason it's not, if it is there, and the part of the reason you might not notice it is because in which the way the film gets to that point, it becomes like this. You see it from another perspective, and then we jump from somebody else's perspective of seeing the events happen of how she dies, and then we're jumping to almost like this more spiritual, very much more of a subjective view of her, and she's trying to figure out what's going on, and you quickly realize, because she even mentions it early in the movie, is about she's afraid of not existing and how
Yeah,
nobody notices her,
which we actually
and it's
see.
this simple thing of her dying, right?
She says
Like,
specifically, I have this recurring dream that I
yes,
look in the mirror and I don't have a reflection. And then
yeah,
we see that after
you see
she
that
passes.
happen. And then
Yeah.
it finally dawns on you when she gets to when she sees the hand of these other people, and they're doing the talk to me game, and then you realize, oh, she's a dead spirit now, she's died.
Yeah.
um that it like kind of all
But
comes full
I
circle
mean, the
there.
moment that she stands back up after being hit by a car, you're like, okay, she's definitely dead. And then they go into the hospital sequence and she's walking around and you're like, okay,
Right,
she's, like, you know what's
she's
coming. And then
dead
you
dead.
see a light and you're like, okay, that's the candle, but
Right,
it's like, I'm looking at it right now and she
you
gets
don't see
up.
anybody out filming
I would,
her.
I would love if the people back there had their cell phones out. This guy's calling on a cell phone. These people are running up, but and then there's
Yeah,
Jade with Riley, and like
yeah.
it would be awesome
Oh,
if
so
these
Charlie,
people
I
were
was
just
gonna tell you
filming the
though,
scene.
you remember, so this week we were
Ah,
watching
that's
the movie.
that's what it should. It's like people should be filming her dead body on the ground, and then
Right.
it'd be
Me
perfect. But
perfect. I could easily see it just going right above or right below Infinity Pool. I don't really have any huge qualms with that. I'm like, that's kind of where somewhere in that realm was where I was thinking it should
yeah,
land anyway tonight. Because I was like,
it's
yeah,
fantastic.
I think it's just slightly better than Guardians in its simplicity. Like that just kind of elevates it, and
It
it's still a much more
outclasses it,
classier. It outclasses it in that regards too.
undoubtedly.
It's
Yeah,
not like it doesn't have to use the crutch of like all these crazy choreographed fight scenes and things like that, which are great, but like it
yeah,
doesn't need any of that. It's very much a character piece with a really great underlining horror theme. The thing I was going to tell you, Charlie, though, is I think I sent you a video and I was like freaking out, and you're like, "Whoa, were you scared of this movie?" I wasn't scared. It was more anxiety because you get to the later end of the movie and you're like, "Oh my god, she's going to kill the brother. Oh my god, she's going to kill the brother." And they kind of the whole movie grips you where you're just like thinking like, when is it going to happen? What is she going to do? And it just
yeah.
gets worse and worse to the point when she's wheeling her brother, this girl's brother, down to the traffic, and you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen?
Would you remember where she got
Um,
the inspiration for that from?
the mercy kill. It was from the kangaroo.
Yeah, so the whole idea was, and it was
Like that
interesting because
idea was in her head already, and
yeah, so
so then the demon kind of like suggests to her like, oh yeah, you should. Let me show you
yeah,
that kangaroo. You remember that thing that you didn't do earlier in the movie? You should do that here because he's not going to live, and
yeah.
he's gonna,
She
you
came
got to
across
kill
a
him.
dead kangaroo, and they, which I like. For me, speaking of cringe, I am an old man. I can't stand that. The cringy. I see. I'm old school. I put a Y on the end. The cringy moment where they come across this dead kangaroo, and their idea to put it out of its misery is to run it over again, which like might work. But me, I would use a firearm like a real person should. But that was the whole idea, was that she was going to run over the kangaroo, and she wusses out. And it's mostly because she has death on the mind, because she just lost her mom,
Right.
so she can't really deal with it. And Riley's like, what are you doing? She says another car will come, blah, blah, blah. So I like that. That's a neat little, planning an idea. And then later it's, how is she going to kill Riley instead? But at the same time, though, it's odd because she could have just stabbed him with the scissors, which she'd already done with Dad. Instead, she doesn't do that. She decides to wheel him out to the highway, and she's going to push him off. And it just kind of becomes like, you can almost imagine a first draft was she was about to stab stab Riley in the bed, and I don't know, whatever, somebody shot her instead, and they were like, it's kind of boring. How about instead she wheels him out, and then we'll plant this thing with the kangaroo. My point being that that's my only beef. My only beef is that the third act isn't quite perfect. It's not enough for me to lower it further. I still think it outclasses these other movies. But the benefit there, though, is that she is being led by these let's just call them demons.
I think the other aspect I like is the traffic kill, though, is
sorry. That is why you don't contact the dead, because you never know for sure if it's who you're looking for or if it's just Satan himself. That is why the Bible says don't contact the dead. And that's what she ends up. She thinks she's talking to her mom, and the whole time she's talking to a fucking demon.
Right. No, I actually like the traffic aspect of it, because it ties it back into the Mercy kill with the car, but also it ties it with, she doesn't want to do it herself, so she's basically letting fate do it, or that's her idea, even though it's like, that's not what you're intentionally doing this, so it's like, makes you feel like, oh, I just pushed him into traffic, I didn't like pull a trigger. So yeah, I think the movie's brilliant, and I think putting it below Infinity Pool is fine. Like, that's when we get in this, like, those three movies. I think Beau Is Afraid just kind of is more of an epic than anything else, so that's why it just goes right above Infinity Pool, and there's a lot more elements to that movie, and all in all, I think putting it next to Infinity Pool is perfect. I just don't know above or below, but Infinity Pool also kind of does a similar, give me a second, but like Infinity Pool's premise has a kind of similarity to this movie, in that, like, the premise behind Infinity Pool is, if you commit a crime, you can pay somebody to make a clone of yourself, and they'll take the punishment for the crime.
You pay the government a ton of money, they clone you,
and they kill the clone. In that, just compartmentalizing that, just as that's the concept, that's the premise, and then it gets abused in the same way we have the similar thing here, where it's like you have a premise, an idea that gets abused, and then the characters have to deal with the ramifications of that. And I like kind of how these movies aren't totally similar, but I think this would be a great movie night where you're like, watch Infinity Pool, watch Talk to Me back to back. I think that would be like perfect double feature to watch.
Yeah.
So I don't care if it's below it or above it. I think putting it right next to each other, I don't care. I think that works.
So let's just cover off on a couple other just brilliant moments. Like,
you have too many things. What else do you have?
So you mentioned that the creators, they had that moment where a guy was whatever, he was having a bad reaction to a drug at a party, and everybody was just filming him instead of helping him.
Right.
Well, you see that specifically, there's a moment where Daniel does it for the first time, and they they all do this when they say I let you in, and they lean back and they're like
they're choking,
and he's choking. And Jess, is it, whoever it is, the female of the drug pushers, let's call them, she's going, wait, wait. And I mean, it's seriously no different than like you're in this. The drug allegory is just so perfect where there's this thing going on where anybody concerned for the person involved is going to be going, hang on, that's too far. Like imagine like they're watching somebody do like autoerotic asphyxiation and they like have to choke themselves to get off. I mean, it's like, and it's like, oh my God, stop it. And they're like, no, wait. And then it happens. And then the person doing it is like, that was the most pleasurable thing I ever did. That was so fantastic. And then it becomes addicting. They just want to do it again and again. And that was the brilliance of that montage of seeing them just have this party. And the whole time you're trying to remember that it's not just this like pleasurable drug, but it's like the spirits of dead human beings, of like people's mothers and fathers and daughters and brothers. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's so gross. It's just, you feel so gross watching these post-millennial kids abusing this thing. Oh, and that's the genius of it. But I think it still pales next to the idea of removing consequences from a bunch of wealthy people who then end up just turning into children. I mean, there's no better scene than in Infinity Pool where they're eating breakfast and the main character is just flicking food at another tourist. You know, he's just being a kid. And that whole my whole thing is that idea carries from beginning to end. It's all the way up to that brilliant ending where they're taking the bus back to the airport and everybody's like, so we'll see you next season. Yeah, that was so great. Oh my God, I had so much fun. Cut to them murdering people, having crazy orgies. You know, it's like it's so complete in that sense. But this though, we already talked about heroin and whippets. We already talked about modern slang, and we kind of talked about the mumble rap. That was like the way you start off a movie in my nightmare is the first party scene and the second party scene both had mumble rap, where mumble rap is always the same thing. It's I think every song is just that, right? So they're walking into these parties and I'm like, what am I watching? I want to shoot myself. And then that devolves into this ceremony, right? This drug allegory. So
I thought it was garbage. I think it should be below Knights of the Zodiac. I think you're full of crap.
Yeah.
This list is messed.
I'm under the influence of a ghost. But also what we didn't really mention though is that on top of that, it's like combining drug allegory with old parties that I never took part in, but you know, where like people break out the Ouija board or do that like light as a feather, stiff as a board, or like Bloody Mary, any of those weird urban legend type of things, right? And that's what this was. It's like, you know, they're casually talking about like, oh yeah, I got this hand. It's the hand of a medium or psychic or Satanist or something. Like,
we don't know.
And everybody's just so casual about it because they just live in this digital age where nothing that happens out here is real. All that matters is what's recorded. Right. And I'm fully self-aware that I'm saying that with a camera pointed at me, talking to you on the internet. But it's like, that's freaky, dude. It's freaky.
Oh my God. Is that a chessboard back there, by the way?
It is. I know you just got into it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really got into chess. I need to get better. I need to like read up on chess.
No, just on chess.com, just start doing the exercises. That's the best.
I have, but some of them they cap off at a point, and then you're like, you can't do any more until another week goes by, and you're like,
yeah,
okay.
For anybody unaware, McCurdy recently was like, hey, do you play chess? And I said, do you know me at all? And then we've been playing ever since. Apparently, chess is making a comeback, but I've been only
a lot. I think chess.com, dude. I was playing it. I was on set, and some dude, I was playing chess, and they saw that I was playing chess. Like, dude, you got chess.com? Dude, add me on chess.com. I was like, okay.
Have them add me. I'm constantly, even in our Discord, I'm constantly, periodically, I'm like, anybody want to play?
wanna play some
Okay,
chess?
just making sure that we've hit these things because another like subtle thematic thing is that we already talked about how nobody will talk to Mia, right? Her best friend just kind of ignores her for the phone.
Mhm.
The first party scene that, before Mia volunteers to do the possession thing, she shows up and nobody will talk to her. And that's something that a lot of people can identify with. The first time you walk into a party, you're like, what do I do? And so what does she do? She walks up to somebody and she says, what does she say? She's like, "Yo, what's up?" And the girl says, "We're just chilling." She's like, "Okay, cool." And then they ignore her and then she's sitting there and she's kind of trying to make small talk with people and they're just sitting there on their phones. And then she walks over to the fish bowl or whatever, and she's staring at that. And then Jade comes up and Jade says, "What are you doing?" And Mia says, "I'm just being weird." And I think at least I can absolutely identify with that. Most parties, I'm the guy hanging out with the dogs. I'm like, "Where are the dogs?" "Oh, there's like 7 dogs in the back room." I'm like, "I'll be in the back room." But that's the whole thing is like at these youth parties, nobody knows how to interact. So what do?
They get on their phones and
They
we're
do
just
drugs and
chilling,
they
bro.
drink. And the whole point is that it's like they're letting this thing into them so that they can essentially be possessed by a different spirit where they feel like they're in the passenger seat and not the driver's seat, so that they just kind of come out of their skin. What does that sound like? That sounds like being possessed by another spirit. It's just like that. That's again, for the billionth time. That's the brilliance of this movie. So she even says, Jade comes over and Mia says, "I'm being weird," and Jade says, "You just have to let loose." And she starts doing this, right? It's like, I just gotta let loose. I gotta chill out. And because everybody at these parties, they don't want to be themselves. They want to be somebody else. They want to be anybody but themselves, and that's why they drink and do drugs. That's the essence of partying, is like trying to leave yourself behind and become something else. And then in this case, it's literally becoming the spirit of a dead person. So and then all that is just kind of wrapped up in the idea that nobody will talk to her, And Nico, I think we should go through Nico's
Yeah,
messages, because
Nico had
Nico
a
said
lot
at
to
some
say
point,
about the premise of it.
but this right here specifically, the damn, because this is my main point, is that the title is so perfect. Right here. Oh no, sorry, Nico, you have so many that I can't keep up. But basically, how nobody will talk to her, and then ultimately, that's what do you do if you show up to a party and nobody will talk to you? And then coincidentally, she sits down in a chair, grabs a satanic hand, and pleads, "Talk to me," because that's all she wants. Again, the only person who did talk to her was her dad, but she just readily ignored him because it's like, he won't understand. Her friend won't talk to her. Nobody at the party will talk to her. But then she reaches out to this spirit that can pull her out of her own body and make her secondary, right? Like make her subservient to what it wants to do. So I'm just in awe that anybody could take all of these ideas and lump them into a movie like this. It's wildly impressive.
Are you impressed?
I'm impressed.
Are you entertained? Do you have
Is that
anything
not why
else?
you are here? I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find exactly what Nico said. I'm just going to start at the beginning and go through all of them. Nico said, "Hey, hey." And then Nico said, "Great choice of a movie." And then said, "I've only ever seen one other Australian movie, Wolf Creek."
Are you heard of
I
it?
don't know if I've
Never
seen that
seen it.
one. None of these predictable jump scares. Yep, exactly. That separates wheat from chaff.
I did
when it comes
watch.
to horror
So I did
movies.
watch real quick though. I did watch Rucka Rucka, they had a video about them going to Sundance because they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's a huge deal. We're at Sundance," and I guess they never expected them to make it in there. And while they were at Sundance, they were talking to one distributor, and he was applauding them and just being like, "Oh man, I really like how like you don't really use jump scares," and like just kind of like giving them compliments on just that alone. And I was like, "Yeah, you're right. The movie doesn't really give you jump scares." And it also kind of reminded me of this thing I read about Stephen King about how he talks about the three types of horror that we experience, or three types of fear, being the first being gross out, which you do get in this movie. You do get gross out with the looks of the dead, and then the like the woman sucking on his foot, and like when you see Daniel being or was it Riley? What was it? Daniel? Riley? What was his name?
Riley's the
being
brother
like,
who then like tried to rip his
right
own eye
when
out.
you have that vision, when she has that vision of like Riley stuck in hell basically, and her is like he's being taken by
Yeah.
all these naked people, like old naked people, and it's really gross, and you're like, oh my god. So you do see gross out. And then the other being like horror. And I'm trying to remember what the difference between the horror and terror was, but I think horror was when you see something that you cannot explain, which you see a lot of in this movie when your mind's like, wait, what the heck did I just see?
You're saying how you define what horror is?
No. He has three Stephen King, three types of horror, or three levels of horror is what he calls it. And first being gross out, which is kind of the first tier, and that's the gruesomeness or something like you see disgusting, and it's usually more in disgust. The second tier is the horror or the graphic portrayal of the unbelievable. The third, finally, according to King, at the highest, and as he explains, the worst level of fear is terror. This is where the master of horror shines the most. This is where the induction of fear is solely caused by imagination. This is perfectly crafted for literary use, as the images being created is entirely the reader's mind. All the author has to do is simply suggest the unknown, and as the reader will fill in the blanks with something truly terrifying.
Funny, because the way I always understood it, or at least in I think a buddy of mine in college was he explained to me that the difference between horror and terror is that terror is man-made and horror is supernatural. And I always thought that was interesting. And I don't know if I maybe at some point researched to see if that was true, but that always made sense to me that terror would be like, I mean, certain things do become supernatural, but maybe like I Know What You Did Last Summer or something that I don't think that movie had a supernatural element, right? But something that is like, I don't know, like a serial killer movie is terror, and then horror would be The Exorcist or this movie, where it is a supernatural element as opposed to
I
just
never
like
broke those two. To me, they always were under the same umbrella, but I do feel like that more encapsulates like the difference between a thriller and a horror film. But there's some horror films that people would classify as strictly a horror film, like Silence of the Lambs. Even though there's no supernatural element, it's more of the gross out, disgust type of horror that you describe, or the sight of the horrific acts of the characters. But there's not a supernatural element. There's not something that elevates it above just being the norm. If that makes sense. And I guess that's maybe where your friend was saying like terror and horror are different, because terror is something men could do versus the horror. But I feel like they could also be in the same boat, because you have horror in like Apocalypse Now, and he describes the horror of war and the people and the horrible things that everybody does to each other. So I don't know.
With that, it
Maybe
may have
I've been
been the
drinking.
horror. I think the horror specifically was just facing death, was it
No.
not?
I think my point I was trying to get to, though, was that I do like that anxiety feeling that this movie gets you to towards the end, because it really does agree. Instead of doing a bunch of jump scares, it really makes you feel for the characters. It really makes you feel for the brother, who's like this innocent little boy who's still trying to figure things out, and he's like been possessed, and he's basically
Every
like
time
hurting
he
himself.
comes back to, he
It-
he
yeah, he
awakens,
starts
he
trying to
tries to
hurt
kill
himself.
himself.
And
Oh,
I feel so
yeah.
bad and so horrible. And then
Ugh.
all of a sudden Mia's trying to kill him because she thinks that's the only way to cure him is to kill him.
Yeah.
And I just like and the anxiety feeling that I got watching this movie, the closest I can describe it, the closest I've gotten to that was Uncut Gems, where you're just on the edge of your seats, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to this person? Like, are they going to die? Are they going to get killed? Those were the kinds of things that freaked me out about this movie. So I think this movie was great.
Yeah,
And I think
I
putting it,
went
I
ahead
think
and
putting it number 5 is fine.
put it at 5.
I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm not sitting here as per usual. I'm not sitting here saying that its flaws make it terrible. It's just it makes them slightly inferior to Infinity Pool. And even with Infinity Pool, over October I watched The Possessor, and I was kind of shocked to see how many filmmaking similarities there are between The Possessor and Infinity Pool. You can clearly tell it's the same filmmaker, including having. Do you remember like we talked about the orgy montage in Infinity Pool that took them forever to assemble, and it made sense in Infinity Pool. In Possessor, it kind of made sense. Like there are all these elements of Possessor where I was like, okay, this feels like a sophomore effort. And I regardless of it actually being his second movie or not, I think we said it was, but regardless, it seems like a more junior effort. And then Infinity Pool is like, okay, this guy's made a couple movies before, and this is a little more complete. And not to say that these guys, it being a thing of like, this is the first movie versus the third movie or whatever. But I mean, what Orson Welles, his first movie was Citizen Kane, right? Like, so somebody can knock it out of the park with their first turn at bat. But the point being that Infinity Pool has just a little bit more mastery over it. But Talk to Me is like I said from the get-go, refreshing. It has just a refreshing take on possession. And again, it's because we're so used to possession happening and everybody in the room is like, oh my God. With this, they're laughing. They're immature kids laughing that a recently deceased person possessed their
What you
best
forgot
friend.
to mention, Charlie, what you forgot to mention though, is that with usually with possession, we're not allowed into the room to stop the possession.
Unless you're a member of the patriarchy.
Unless you're a member, unless you're a man, then you can go into.
I stand by it. That's probably the dumbest moment in cinematic history. The dumbest moment. Anybody wants to talk about legacy? Like taking a legacy and pooping on it? Like, what'd you say about William Friedkin? He was like, the guy who made Pineapple Express is going to make a sequel to my movie. And guess what, William?
I'm going to haunt him for the rest of my life. See, that someone needs to write that movie. That's
but no, don't haunt him.
I want to see a horror. I want to see like a spoof horror comedy basically about that premise where a guy remakes this movie and then the director of the actual like movie who's dead is like haunting him after the release of the movie and like just terrorizing him, and he's worse than the critics and like like makes him try to go make his own movie. Like he's like, no, you're gonna make my movie, the movie that I was going to make or whatever.
I need to look up. I took a Beatles class in college. It's probably the best class I ever took, and I wrote out an outline for a movie that it was basically like John Lennon gets shot. I can't remember exactly, but John Lennon gets shot, and his soul is reborn into a kid who then like grows up and like goes to seek out Yoko Ono or something and like forgives her for breaking up the Beatles or something ridiculous like that. Like I can't I gotta look that up
my
because I
gosh.
can't remember where that came from.
You know
but,
what? You know what? But there was that Beatles movie that came out not that long ago, yesterday, that like got
Yeah.
sued for like
He got
false
sued?
advertisement. Yeah,
Why?
did you not hear about this?
Why'd he get sued?
Okay, so apparently, the latest Bond girl, I don't remember her name off the top of my head. She's the Italian beautiful woman that she was in the last Bond movie.
Monica
The one,
Bellucci?
whatever. She's beautiful. I love her. She's
She's in The
gorgeous. She
Matrix
was
with
in
those
Blade Runner. The chick that was in Blade Runner.
Oh, the young one. Okay.
Right. So she
No,
was in
she's
that
not
movie.
Italian. She's like Brazilian or something.
That's right.
Anyway,
She's
go
Brazilian.
ahead.
You're right.
Go ahead.
Anyway, she was in that movie called Yesterday. The premise of that movie was this guy somehow, I think something happens where he like wished he invented all the Beatles music or something like that. And
He
then
got hit by lightning or something, and he wakes up,
something
and the
happens.
Beatles never existed, but he alone remembers all their
remembers
songs.
all the Beatles
so he
songs.
starts playing all their songs, and people think he's a genius.
Right. So, but what happened was with that movie was apparently there was an trailer, and Armis was in that trailer for the movie, and it was like for a split second of a shot. I don't even think it was the whole trailer. She's in the trailer, and someone went to see the movie and was very disappointed that she wasn't in the movie because her scene got deleted. They never used that scene, and this happens all the
No,
time.
I thought she
There's
was
times
the
where
girlfriend. Wasn't she the girlfriend?
so there was so she got cut out of the movie, and so then the theater, like the studio, got sued by this guy who said, oh, they were false advertising because they told me that this actress was going to be in this movie and they weren't in this movie.
That's
And
so
so after
stupid. That's
it
so
is stupid.
stupid.
So what happened was the judge was like, yeah, this is false advertising. Universal Studios, you owe these people this much amount of money. So ever since then, all the studios have been a little more cautious on the trailers that they send out as far as making anything that may misconstrue what happens, which kind of sucks for people like Marvel, where Marvel Studios has put out trailers in the past where there are definitely shots that were not in the movie that made you think the movie was going to go one way, completely goes the other way, because they're trying to hide spoilers. They want people guessing what's going to actually happen. And they've done that in the past, and you're seeing less of that now just because a studio got sued over a single shot of an actress that didn't make it into the final cut of the movie.
Well, hang on. Yeah, it was Lily James I was thinking of. Lily James is the girlfriend, so
Right.
she's definitely in the movie. But yeah, Anna de Armas. Can I sue the Broccolis because she was supposed to be a Bond girl, and she was hardly in No Time to Die?
I don't think so, because she's
I think
still
that's
in the movie.
false. No, that's false advertising.
She's still in the movie.
She was supposed to be a Bond girl, and she was
She was
in
still-
a scene.
Listen,
That's not a Bond girl.
she's still
That
in the
doesn't
movie.
constitute a
She
Bond
was
girl.
still in the movie.
She's
She's still in the movie.
I can't believe she played Marilyn Monroe. It makes sense.
I heard
she
that
actually looks like
movie
a pretty good
was a
Monroe.
disaster. I heard a lot of people
Which is
did not
too
like that.
bad. I used to work for that director, and
Oh, really?
and he made the Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and then he made a couple more movies. And I remember him being in The Offices, and I was like, so how do you feel about your next flight? I for some reason I guess I won't name it. So how do you feel about it? He was like, reviews come out soon. I'm gonna have a heart attack. Like he was just like out of his mind. Well, it was killing them softly, and people.
Oh
liked
yeah, I
that
remember
movie.
that didn't do well.
It didn't
remember
do
that did
well,
not
but
do
people
well.
like that movie. So I haven't seen the Marilyn Monroe movie. It
I
kinda
basically
saddens
what
me
I
that it didn't
gathered
do
about
well.
it was that it's artistically, it's like it's got some very visually stunning things. The biggest issue with a lot of people have taken with it is that its take on Marilyn Monroe's life is very drastically kind of rewritten in some regards, and some people are like, this is kind of distasteful. But I've also seen that people have said the movie in itself, regardless of like what actually happened, is just kind of trash. Like people were just like,
that scene with the threesome between JFK and RFK. They didn't need to do that. That's distasteful. That's just wrong.
I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not, but okay.
I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know. But
Okay.
I
There
just
is a
know,
scene where
just
she's
know the
getting
Kennedys were
okay.
into that.
So apparently there was a scene where she's sleeping. I think it was either, I don't know if it's with JFK or who it was in the movie, but she's sleeping with somebody, and then it cuts from like her bedside. She's getting railed, and then like the bed sheets turn into a waterfall, and then it cuts to like a waterfall. Like, I don't know. There's some weird, strange cuts that they do in that movie, which I was like, I kind of just want to see what that is. But it was kind of interesting. Anyway.
Yeah, I kind of want to see what that is too.
I really want you to go watch The
I wanna
Holdovers,
see more
Charlie.
of
I
that.
really want you to go and watch
Yeah,
The
no, I will.
Holdovers so that we can either A, argue about it and you tell me how it was a terrible movie, or B, how much you're going to be like, man, I just wish movies were more like this. And I'd be like, yeah, man, I wish movies were more like this all the time now. I'm like,
No,
why can't we
McCurdy,
see
I
more
already
movies like
talked
this?
about this. You and I are an old married couple that apparently agree on everything now instead of disagreeing like we used to. And this show's boring now. I'm gonna fake it.
Sorry.
I'm gonna go watch Holdovers. I'm gonna love it, and I'm gonna come into the discussion being like, it was terrible.
Oh, okay.
It's the worst thing I've ever seen. It was like joyous. Who wants to feel joy now? We're on the cusp of World War III. Why would anybody want to feel joy right now? Everybody
I don't even
should
think the
feel
movie's
terrible.
joyous. It's more. I want you to just see it just so you get the
No, I'll go
feeling.
see
Because I
it.
was just like, oh,
I'll
I
see it
felt
this
this
week.
movie. Like, I was just like, man, I want to see this again.
I'll see
So
it
I might
tomorrow.
be seeing it with my dad and my uncle and stuff. So we might go and see it again because I was like, I kind of enjoyed this movie. Next movie we are supposed to be seeing is the Hunger Games prequel. And that might be a movie where you and I go head to head and be like, I'm like, oh, it's great. It's fine. And you're like, this movie was garbage because it was garbage. And I'd be like, all right.
I've liked them all so far. So
I didn't like, okay, out of the Hunger Games movies, the third one was my least favorite.
I don't have any.
Second one was-
It's
was-
been years.
Second one was my favorite of those.
I would need to watch them again, but like they've been.
I think
fine
if
so
I
far.
recall, I think the third one was my least favorite just because it was a part one of a two-parter and it kind of ends kind of like, okay, that's the ending, or okay. And you know there's gonna be another one, so you're just like,
that was
I
that
just want the rest of
time.
the movie.
Everybody was
When
splitting
everybody
up
wanted to do
their
one
final
part one,
movie.
part two.
Yeah, that was the fad at that time, and that's why
Because
again,
Harry
that's why
Potter did it, everybody wanted to do it.
yeah, and that's why Mission Impossible doing it. I'm like, really? And then them backtracking. I'm like, that's great. That's great. Just do Dead Reckoning and then
Well, like
come up with another
Marvel
title.
did the same thing though, but Marvel's take on it was originally when they announced that they were doing Infinity War, they were originally going to go, hey, we're doing Infinity War part 1, part 2.
1 and 2. Yeah.
Then they changed it and said, no, we're just doing Infinity War. And then the next one's going to be called something else. And I was like, great. I liked that. I liked that they changed that.
Yeah.
But it was still a part 1, part 2, but they did a better job of self-containing that. But it works
dude,
better
even
now.
okay. It's pathetic, but it's November, right? November is for war movies. I watched all of right away. November 1, I watched all of Band of Brothers. I go right into the Pacific. Then my cousin, who I've known my same age as me, and I've known him my whole life, and that idiot, I'm on the phone with him. What are you doing? I go, I'm on the final episode of Band of Brothers. I'm kind of a mess. And he's like, oh, what's that? I go, Band of Brothers. Oh, is that new? What is that? And I was like, you're messing with me. How could you possibly not know what Band of Brothers is? Especially spending every fall with me ever. What is wrong with you? He's like, no, I don't know what that is. And I was like, dude, you're awful. So we were up in Michigan over the weekend, and I didn't let him leave until we watched all 10 hours. And I was like, you are not a man until you watch all of Band of Brothers. We killed it off, and he left. And I was like, okay, now I can be proud of you again.
So are you telling me I must watch Band of Brothers? That's what you're telling me, because I've never seen it.
Have you not?
I've never seen them.
Oh,
I had a boss that really wanted me to watch it, and I borrowed it, and I just never got around to actually putting it in and watching it. So, and I think it is on Max. Let me just double check. I think it's still on Max, and you can still watch it. If it is,
oh yeah, it should be.
That might be the next thing I watch.
but I go right from that. I go right from like the reverence of the greatest generation to these kids partying and like getting possessed by demons. You know, and I'm just,
and mumblecore rap and like
exactly. I'm like,
for real,
yeah,
on God, dead ass.
yeah, yeah. On God, I love when the mom said it though. She was like, "On God, I will
I
kill
love.
you if
Actually,
you
we
have a
never talked.
party."
That was one thing we never talked about. We never talked about Awen's like her just like always seeing through the kids, and I just
Yeah,
loved her character. I loved
yeah.
her character because she's just like you're going to a party. What are you guys doing? Like
Hey,
I
she
even
already told
remember
me what time's the party. Mom, there's no party.
I had a
She told me there's a
flashback.
party. It's fine. Like that.
Did you
Yeah,
ever
she was
have
good.
I had
She
a
was
did
good.
you have the flashback moment? I had a flashback moment when she opens the door and like the three of them are just hanging out sitting there, and I do remember this. I remember being at a girlfriend's house and like the door was shut. We weren't doing anything. We were just talking and chilling out, hanging out. But then like mom came in and she's like, I don't like the door shut in the house when someone's
Yeah,
over, and like open the door, and I was like, "Oh, I remember that."
yeah.
It
No,
was so it was like I loved her. I loved every minute that she's on screen is great. But like she's not
yeah,
in the movie. I feel like she was like the biggest name in that entire movie, but like she makes her presence known and she does a great job.
yeah.
Um, but she's great.
So anyway,
Because she was also as Lord of the Rings.
everybody watch Band of Brothers.
Hold on.
It's
Why
the
it is oh no, wait. I
greatest
remember what I was gonna
miniseries
mention
ever
about
made.
that. So they're coming out with a sequel series. Did you hear
They
about
are.
this?
Yeah, they are. Masters of the Air.
Masters of the Air.
Yeah. I
With
hope it's just as good.
Elvis. With Elvis.
That is Elvis. Yeah. I
It's
can't even
Elvis.
remember
Well,
why I
the
brought up
kid who played
Band of
Elvis.
Brothers in the first place.
It is on. Yeah, I can watch it on Max. So I might call my dad and be like, "Dad, I guess we're gonna watch Band of Brothers now," and he's gonna be like, "Oh, okay."
Your dad will
My dad's
probably be
over.
like,
My
"I've
dad's here.
seen it a million times." You
Right.
know, that and the, yeah, K1, B.O.B. and Pacific are great. I've seen you can't beat Band of Brothers. The Pacific can try as much as it wants, but nothing
Is
can ever
Pacific another
beat Band of
sequel
Brothers.
series, or is it just something?
Band of Brothers is the story of the European theater in World War II. The
Right.
Pacific is the Pacific theater, but the advantage is that Band of Brothers follows a specific company of men from who had the perfect
It was like a true
trajectory
story,
through the
wasn't it?
war. Yeah, and it's
It was
all
a true
everything
story.
is true beginning to end. The Pacific is just less specific, and that's it's still amazing, but yeah. So, but again,
Less specific.
I go from that to watching. I'm like, wait, hang on, I got to turn off all these war movies to watch this movie about punk kids willingly possessing their bodies. And just
Charlie, I'm telling you, you're gonna watch The Holdovers, and you're gonna be like, "I'm Paul Giamatti," and I'm like, "Yeah, you are. That's you.
okay.
That's you." I enjoyed that
Yes.
movie a lot. I really do want to go back and watch it again. So
Yeah.
but
So,
you might go into it and you'd be like, Ryan, this movie was terrible. And I'd be like, all right.
okay. So, Battle of the Bulge. Are you K1? You got to specify though. Are you talking about Bastogne or are you talking about the breaking point? Which one? And we'll wait for you
Oh my
because I got to
God.
know. And then we'll sign off. But there are
Yeah, we gotta
two
sign off.
episodes about the Battle of the Bulge, and one of them follows their medic, and the other one follows Donnie Wahlberg, who is terrific in it. But yeah, it's just I hope. Okay, breaking point. So that's the second one, the Donnie Wahlberg one. Yeah, agreed. They're both great. I have fantasies of maybe you shouldn't watch it, McCurdy. I have fantasies as I'm watching it. I'm like, we should rank all the episodes of Band of Brothers,
God.
which feels. Wait, no, that's not no. The medic one. No. The medic one is Bastogne. The breaking point is the one with Donnie Wahlberg. That's episode 7. Episode 6 is the medic one with Eugene.
I'm literally looking at the list of these episodes as you were saying it. So I was like, oh, okay.
But
it is on Max, so I can watch it. I will probably.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you
like,
hold
yeah,
off, I fantasize that we could rank those. It feels like blasphemy to rank Band of Brothers episodes, but at the end of the day, it would just be an excuse to talk about them. Because it's like, it's like when I talk about Lord of the Rings, I'm like, we could never rank Lord of the Rings. There's no ranking Lord of the Rings. It's just one story. Kind of the same with Band of Brothers, but it would just be an excuse to talk about Band of Brothers, which is like the greatest 10 hours of television ever produced. So I'm just going to float that out there because I think that would be. I'm
still going to watch this.
Fantastic.
If my dad has time, I might go see it. But I think the plan is we'll try to go watch the Holdovers. I'm a little upset that after watching that movie, I'm like, dang, I wish it was in more theaters, because that was part of the reason we couldn't watch it this weekend, was because I couldn't find it anywhere. Yeah. And I'm like, I was fortunate because people were asking me like, where did you watch this? And I was like, oh, it was at the AMC I normally go to. And they're like, oh, and I guess they only played it at that one AMC. So
yeah,
I don't know, but the Holdovers, you should definitely go watch that one.
We'll do that. We'll try to do that maybe Wednesday night or something. So
Thursday. It'll be Thursday.
Thursday? Okay.
Wednesday. Yeah, we can talk it Thursday.
Cool. Otherwise, any final comments?
Thoughts? Any final comments about the movie?
Yeah.
It was great. I think I can't wait for another one of these movies to come out, and I really kind of wish these two filmmakers the best to make.
Who are we toasting to? The filmmakers?
We're toasting to. I'm just gonna post this up.
What are their names?
Michael and Daniel.
Are they brothers?
Yeah, they are twin brothers.
God, they look.
Apparently, they're twins. I don't think they're twins. I don't think they're actually twins. It says they're twins.
They look exactly the same.
They're 2 years apart.
Okay,
Danny and
Daniel.
Danny and Michael. Yeah, Danny and Michael. Filippo,
Daniel or Danny?
Raka. They have a YouTube channel called Raka. That's how they got. That's got their start.
Okay, cool.
And apparently a lot of people said at Sundance, they were like, yeah, you can't tell this is someone's first film. Like, you're like, usually you watch a first person's film, you're like, oh, this seems like their first feature. This doesn't seem like a first feature. This seems like people who've been like honing their craft and like love horror films and know what not to do, and it shows. So I think these guys did a fantastic job. I can't wait to see what they do next. Probably another sequel to this, unfortunately. I say that unfortunately because I'd rather just see something different.
Yes.
From these guys. And I know they're doing a prequel. So we already know there's a prequel and a sequel to this. The prequel is going to be kind of like a missing movie, like searching, like it's going to be on computer screens. And I don't know when they say prequel, if it's a feature film or if it's just like a little short film. But apparently they've made a prequel to this already. And then they're going to be working on a sequel as well. So past that, I can't wait to see what else they do. They were also, when they went to Sundance, they were in talks with like James Wan and these other big name producers and directors. So
I mean, however it worked, they sold this movie or whatever to A24. A24 has an expansive track record of high quality horror movies. So good for these guys. We look forward to what they have coming next beyond this, because I don't know. I mean, I hope, again, if it's Talk to Me, but hopefully it's good. Hopefully the prequel's good. But McCurdy, you have to go blow out that candle so we can close this off.
Oh, okay.
You got to close the door.
Shut the door. We got to shut the door. Hold on. Got to shut the door.
Shut the door. Quick, because oh my God, we're past 90 minutes. We're past 90 minutes. You have to close the door. Close the door. Wait, did you already close it? Oh, it's off. Okay. Drink. Drink. He's choking. He's choking.